Each human in the Western world is eating about a credit card worth of plastic every week. Yes, you heard that right. A credit card. Now, that's about 4.7 grams. That is a hell of a lot of plastic because it doesn't just stay in the gut. No, it actually gets in our system. We're only just beginning to realize the impact of plastics in our world, because plastics are not just around us. Plastics are in us. And that's quite scary. We were finding tiny shards of breakdowns of plastic within our body.
So I am super excited to chat with today's guest. We have Dr. Stefan Neff, and we are going to be talking about environmental toxins and toxicants, talk about microplastics, mold.
A recent study from last year looked at the stuff that builds up inside your blood vessels, and they analyzed that, and they found 40% had microplastics in them. And they then looked at what happened to these people later on. And it turned out that those people who had microplastics in the plaques inside the arteries had a 40% higher chance of having a heart attack down the line.
How these microplastics could affect the brain, and do they actually cause permeability of the blood-brain barrier?
Well, for those of you who can see me here, I've got two $2 coins. Well, that's exactly the weight of your thyroid, okay? It's tiny, it's teensy weensy if you think about it. There's a little butterfly in the front of your throat there. Yet, do you know actually how much blood is being pumped through in a day? About 130, 150 liters. Now, this is amazing. This is amazing stuff that is going through. And actually, it gives us already a clear sign why this thyroid is so important. Now, at the same token, if we say that it's only second in blood flow per gram of tissue, second to the kidneys, we also have to say, well, there must be a good reason that this thyroid has such a good perfusion. And of course, it is because the body recognizes things that are important. So blood flow goes there. And that means all the nutrients go there, the iodine that we need, all the trace minerals that it needs, the manganese, the copper, the zinc, the selenium, all the good stuff that the thyroid needs to build these beautiful hormones. Now, if we take that for granted, and if we now throw in some interesting other molecules that maybe we're not supposed to go in there, well, they just go as much to the thyroid as all these beautiful micronutrients that we want. Now, we are living in a very different world compared to our grandfathers, to our great-great-grandfathers. With the Industrial Revolution, we have found ways how to ease our life. And indeed, if you go back, let's say about nearly 100 years now, plastic was first time created. And with that invention of plastic, our world changed forever. And things became so much easier. And we think plastic, wow, we don't even think about it. If I look around here, just with the blinkers on that I've got right now, I see probably 50 things at first glance that are made of plastic. So plastic is everywhere. And we take it for granted. Yet, what we do not know. Yeah, exactly.
Headset and
Absolutely. Everything we have. And it is beautiful because it has revolutionized our way of life. It made life so much easier and so much more convenient. And it's great. What we don't realize is, like so many things in the history of medicine and the history of industrialization, is that everything comes with a price. And we're only just beginning to realize the impact of plastics in our world. Because plastics are not just around us. Plastics are in us. And that's quite scary. We had over the last 5 years, and especially the last 2 years, increasing evidence where we were finding tiny shards of breakdowns of plastic within our body. Initially, we found it in our poo, and yeah, okay, fair enough. From now and then, you might eat a little bit of something. Well, nowadays, we know that each human in the Western world is eating about a credit card worth of plastic every week. Yes, you heard that right. A credit card. Now, that's about 4.7 grams. That is a hell of a lot of plastic because it doesn't just stay in the gut. No, it actually gets in our system. But more insidiously, yes, water and food are ways how we can get those microplastics in. Far more important, we see those microplastics and other toxins coming in through the breathing, because our environment is so full of little microscopic dust, stuff that you can't see. I mean, you see the larger things from now and then when, let's say, the sun sets and there is a stream of light coming into the room, and you might see like a fog in your room, which are essentially dust and all kind of things that are floating there. Now we can look at that in terms of size, and it's the smaller, the tinier size, less than 2.5 microns. This is the kind of stuff that very easily gets inhaled, and where our natural defense mechanisms, our lungs, our trachea, the bronchi, which have little, the kind of gooey stuff where stuff gets trapped and then it gets thrown back out via sort of little cilia, little things that are pushing the dirt back out. Well, those tiny things, they go very easily past those defense mechanisms. And now they're inside the lungs, where there's only just one layer of the lungs. And next to it is a capillary, there's a blood vessel. So stuff very easily goes into the lungs, straight into the bloodstream. And now, where shall we party? So you've got now people who are invading your system. And these people, they are not very nice. These are gangs. These are gangs of ruffians who want to create chaos. Now, how many of them are there? Well, give you an idea. When we talk about plastics, just stick with the plastics. There are probably about 12,000 different chemicals that are used in the creation of plastics. And if you were to look at the various tools that you've got, some of them are really hard but durable. Some of them are very plastic, as in malleable. So there are plasticizers, there are colors in there are other chemicals there, all with different reasons. So therefore, this vast array of different chemicals which are put together and that we call in one term plastic. Could be polyethylene, could be PVC, could be all kinds of things. Now, of these 12,000 chemicals, about 4,600 we know are toxic. Yes, you heard that right. So there are a huge amount of toxic chemicals. They are often very lipid soluble. And that means that they very easily go through cell membranes, that they very easily go into the cells where the blood system or the lymph system or the kind of defensive police in your body can't really find them anymore. So there they are, hidden, and often hidden in fat cells, and we are all getting bigger. Well, we might come to that in a moment, why that might be also part of the microplastics and the chemicals. But there's so much happening. So these microplastics, these multiple substances are everywhere. We're inhaling them constantly if we don't pay attention. We are eating them constantly if we don't pay attention. And we don't know what it really means. We don't know. We don't yet have the alarm sounding. Although for people like you and me, yes, we have got a finger at the pulse of time. Yes, we do understand the increasing problem that we see. To give you two examples, in Hawaii, the Hawaiian health system has, since about 2016, looked at placentas. So the kind of beautiful organ that gives nutrition to the baby whilst it is in the tummy of mommy. So these placentas have been analyzed. About 5-6 years ago, 60% of the placentas had microplastics in them. Nowadays, 2 years ago, 100%. All placentas had microplastics in them. A recent study from last year looked at the stuff that builds up inside your blood vessels that sometimes can give you a stroke or can give you a narrowing of the blood vessels, which provide blood to the brain. Carotid artery, they're called. And sometimes surgeons, they can pick that up and say, okay, we better go in like a plumber and peeling out that rubbish out of the tubes, out of the pipes. And that's called a carotid surgery. And so they looked at what was scraped out, the rubbish that was building up inside the arteries and were potentially causing death in the future for patients. And they analyzed that. And they found that indeed a significant amount, more than half of them actually had microplastics, 40% had microplastics in them. So microplastics were sitting in that narrowing there. And they then looked at what happened to these people later on. And it turned out that those people who had microplastics in the plaques inside the arteries had a 40% higher chance of having a heart attack down the line. We had, last one, scary for us men, you thought a heart on is a good thing. Well, I thought so too, but not when it's plastic. Did you know there was a study looking at both dog penises and human penises, and they found that actually microplastics were embedded in both dogs and humans. Now, that blew my mind. So virtually every single organ system is involved. And we've already implied, or I told you that many of these toxins are very lipid soluble. Therefore, they accumulate in the brain, which is pure lipid. I mean, this is just beautiful. So a lot of those things go up there to the brain. And when we now circle back to thyroid health, we know that the brain, the pituitary gland, plays a role there with TSH. So some of these agents are starting to mess around with the signaling that comes down from the brain to the thyroid. That's already the first introduction where we say, wow, okay, some of these toxins are not very nice, are they? But it's more than that. Because these toxins, they have got multiple ways. I mean, if I was to design a toxin that really messes around with our system from the inside, so a stealth assassin, but slowly, not just one quick hit, but no, slowly destroy the health. Well, they are pretty good. They're ticking most of the boxes, actually. They're stealthy. They work on multiple pathways. And if we look at the thyroid, well, what do we need for the thyroid? We need iodine to come in from the gut and together with other micronutrients come up to the thyroid gland and go inside. Well, let's start with the gut. We know that mycotoxins as well as microplastics do cause leaky gut syndrome. So you've got basically the gut barriers do break down. And you've got also a warping of the tribes of bacteria that live in your gut. For those of you who don't know, there are about 100 trillion friends living in your gut, and they are really, really cool. They are good friends. They are basically a community of different tribes, and they live in harmony. Well, at least that's what they should do. Unfortunately, with ultra-processed food and with the many toxins that we have, the alcohol, the smoking, the stress, and so many other contributors, these tribes get pissed off. The good guys might become less and less in numbers, while the bad guys thrive. In turn, the bad guys just throw another party, an orgy, in fact, with a lot of violence around the party. So again, you've got direct damage to the gut lining, more leaky gut, therefore more inflammation, more radical oxygen species, a lot of things happening. And with that, we have got disruption of iodine coming in. We then go up to the thyroid. That's where actually all the good stuff comes up, and it's supposed to go in. Well, mycotoxins and microplastics might actually block those receptors and actually stop the good stuff coming in. And that is because they might actually interfere with protein synthesis in the thyroid gland and with the enzymes that are there that are needed to actually bring those things in. So here you are. Basically, the good stuff is maybe less coming into the bloodstream. Whatever comes up to the thyroid is less effective. The enzymes that are within the thyroid that are producing those beautiful thyroid hormones, they are less effective or might not work as well. You've got the signaling from the top down that might not work as well. So then we throw out whatever is now left in our beautiful thyroid gland. We throw out the toxins, not the toxins, the thyroid hormones. We throw that out, and out there in the periphery, now the magic was supposed to happen. This T4 is being changed into this T3, this beautiful active form. Yeah, about that. Okay, 60% of that happens in the liver, 20% in the gut, 20% in other tissues. So, nice try. The liver is hammered by the toxins. There is a huge toxic burden to all these chemicals, plus all the other things that are happening. So often our livers are really the powerhouses or the power organ, the one major lovely organ is often so under stress from our lifestyle, from everything else. So it is a very intriguing thing. So the conversion there might be actually hindered. The conversion in the gut might not occur as well as we want it, because the gut, again, has its own problem, the leaky gut, the gut dysbiosis, where all these tribes of bacteria are fighting and are doing not the right things. So we have got less conversion. We have got a multitude of attacks on a multitude of the levels that we see within the system happening. So when we look at these toxins, they're really stealthy assassins, but long-term, they work on a long-term, like someone who's slowly poisoning their partner in an Agatha Christie film, etc. It's the slow death that is waiting. And we don't recognize it as such. Often enough, if you were, actually, I'm talking. Eric, you must have some questions. This is, I'm completely overpowering you. You're just sitting there in this avalanche.
I'm just letting you. You're in a role, so you're doing great. I mean, I guess the one question. So you mentioned how these microplastics could affect the brain. And so they could affect, do they actually cause permeability of the blood-brain barrier? Like the blood-brain barrier doesn't protect the brain from the microplastics? Are they too small, or they just go through, or do they actually disrupt the blood-brain barrier? I don't know if you know
all of them.
Okay.
I think all of them. There's evidence in various animal models, etc., that all of that is happening. Because they are so lipid soluble, they can actually go through lipid membranes, which is sort of, I mean, if we imagine the blood-brain barrier or the gut-blood barrier, kind of whatever barriers you look at, you're talking about cellular membranes, often cells, like in the gut, for example. Is a single layer of cells, and then where these cells are linked together, there's a strong bind there, like glue there, that keeps one cell together, so that really everything that is inside the gut is kept there where it's supposed to be, unless there are specific transporters that are now able to go through the cell and back out the other side, like glucose or our various peptides or amino acids, etc. They all need to go through the cell, and it's highly specialized for that. Now, if you disrupt that, or if we have got compounds that very easily can sneak through those cell membranes, even if there are no transporters there, well, that's exactly what we are seeing there. These highly lipid-soluble agents are there. And it's amazing how easily these things can cross the blood-brain barrier. And we see that, for example, when we look at studies, how much the offspring in both animal experience as well as in humans is concerned. There is certainly a body of evidence, or body of suggestions, shall I say, that links autism and that links behavioral patterns such as ADHD, etc., to toxins in the wider sense. And again, it's so hard to actually nail that down, because when we say microplastics, I just told you there are 4,600 different components. Okay, so you have got a huge burden. And often enough, they play together in funny ways. They can cancel each other out. Well, that's good news. But they can also be synergistic. So because you have got that kind of component, let's say BPA, or let's say PCBs, or, some funny names that you might have come across, and you have others of a different category, maybe take a mold disease, some mycotoxins, 1 + 1 might make 3. Because they not only support each other in the impact on that organ, but they actually double and triple the effect on inflammation within the body. All of these things, I've focused with my explanation a bit more on the thyroid. But if we look at a wider issue, if you look, for example, in your case, Hashimoto's, so an autoimmune condition that affects the thyroid gland, well, funny that is that has been going up significantly in the world, and there are clearly suggestions there that mycotoxins as well as microplastics might directly contribute to that, both directly as a hit on the thyroid as well as indirectly by increasing the amount of free radical oxygen species or reactive oxygen species and an increased level of inflammation, of immune activation that then can focus its concentration on the thyroid gland. So you've got multiple pathways where these things work in. And if, for example, when you look at mold, a bit of a different issue, but very, very closely related. If you look here in New Zealand, we have got a beautiful climate. I mean, for crying out loud, when I arrived here, I often laughed that if one day by accident you drop a packet of seeds on the floor somewhere in the garden, next day you need a machete to hack your way through the forest that has grown by that short period of time. What do you need for that? You need soil, but you need humidity. Yeah, and humidity is good. Now our building standards, not so good. So right now I'm renting a place after divorce. My beautiful house with HRV, etc. is gone. So I'm renting a room and single glazing, no HRV. Yes, there is a lot of moisture. I'm measuring that because I'm interested, of course, in mold. Measuring that in the morning, it's about 80% humidity within my bedroom. So I've got a humidifier that goes on. And in that humidity, well, guess what? Mold grows. Now, there are studies out there in New Zealand that say about 50% of the buildings have at least a DIN-A4 sheet of visible mold inside the house somewhere, if you were to look. Many a times, add another 30% or so, this mold is not visible because let's say it's behind cladding. Because there, once upon a time, last year, there was a little bit of some water leakage from the outside in, or your water heater, something has leaked. And it only takes about 24 hours for mold to build. Now that is now sitting behind there. You don't see it, you don't smell it. Those things that you can smell, they are hidden away. But these mycotoxins, because they're so small and they're so permeable, the toxins come through. Just not those things that you can see visually or maybe olfactorically, if there's a word like that, which you can smell. So these are the problems. So we have got all kind of weird and wonderful things. Some natural, like mold, some chemical or created by humans. But they all have got similar targets within the body. Typically, they mess around with our hormones. So there's this mimicry. And sometimes they can act like a hormone, or they can block the receptor where the hormone normally gets to. And you have different impacts depending on what toxin is blocking which hormone and hormone receptor and how it acts on that receptor. You have a number, I mean, there are at least, I don't know how many different molds there are, for crying out loud, but there are sort of 8, 9 different big groups of mycotoxins out there. Some of them have been known forever. Aflatoxin is a classic one because that in the past has often contributed to massive liver failure. This can be quite dramatic, with death occurring within a week or so, for when grains or other things like corn was affected by these molds and people were ingesting them. So it can very quickly make you sick. But far more commonly nowadays, we don't see these big disasters. Rarely do we see them, but we see much more protracted, slow things. And just as much as hypothyroidism is a chameleon, these exposures to mycotoxins and microplastics are chameleons. How common is it if I was to go into a room, let's say Rotary, or a church gathering, or anyone, a mixed group of people, and I go in there, come on guys, honestly, who of you is suffering from brain fog? Hands go up. Who of you is suffering from chronic fatigue? Hands go up. Lots and lots of people have all these kind of vague kind of symptoms. Often enough with hypothyroidism. I mean, what's the figure? You know more than me. What's the typical delay for a person to be diagnosed with the right diagnosis of hypothyroidism? Often enough when the initial blood tests are seemingly, quotation mark, normal. What's the typical span that it takes for someone to get a proper diagnosis?
It could be like 5, 10, 15 years.
Absolutely.
Long time.
And it's exactly the same thing when it comes to the involvement of environmental toxins. Now, with mycotoxins, we are one step further because there are people like Jill Christa, and there are people out there who have made it their passion, and often due to suffering themselves. they were, I mean, I'm working here in New Zealand, I'm working with a mold whisperer. And Marcel, he is a physiotherapist, well-built, just classic good dude. And he and his wife, both physiotherapists, started working together in a new practice. And very shortly thereafter, they were sick like dogs. And here they are. They already had a pretty good nutrition. They already had activity and exercise in their life. They already knew about all the good things to do. And they were in their 30s at that time. And really, they were quite sick. And then, and their children, it actually started with their children. Their children really played up. So they started initially homeschooling and just tried various things until they finally found that probably mold toxins were a problem. They learned how to investigate that. They did the testing. They found very little support, both in the medical system, because it's still something that is putting aside here. I mean, I talked to a friend of mine who's a plumber and who actually is an eco-plumber. So he is actually really looking at optimizing ecologically your thing. Still, mold toxins were, we see that all the time. Yeah, there's a bit of mold, so what? We're really man in New Zealand, come on. It's that kind of attitude. Yet that kind of attitude slowly is killing us, is making us a very sick society. Because that same attitude applies to ultra-processed foods, to mold, to microplastics, to all the other insults that we do. We live an incredibly unhealthy lifestyle. And I think we will pay the price sooner rather than later. It's not for nothing when we look at the hormones. The thyroid is the classic example, but also look at the sex hormones. Why is it that nowadays, if you think that your daughter is starting puberty at a very early stage, and you go to your GP, they say, what do you mean? She's 8. Yeah, she's starting to develop sexual organs. Yeah, that's normal. We will not organize that. We will not examine that. You think, what? Because societies have basically proved it down. Puberty is coming earlier. Now, this is strange, is it not? And then we see that these endocrine disruptors have been a huge part of our life. Those of you who are a bit older and listening, you might maybe recall the scandal in the 70s and 80s. My God, there are estrogens in our pig meat, in our pork, and there are all kind of other hormones being used in animal practice, and antibiotics are being used, etc. That was a big scandal. Well, guess what? Things have not much changed. Whenever we see one problem, it takes about 10, 20 years for organizations and institutions finally to say, okay, fair enough, we forbid the use of X. But it's just whack-a-mole game. X is forbidden, so people find Y, find Z. And it's whack-a-mole when it comes to these bloody environmental toxins. Take PCBs. Something that was used worldwide, really, from the 30s onwards to the 70s, from typically insulation, typically industrial machines, lubricants, etc. And these PCBs are forever chemicals. They are incredibly long-living, and they have been banned pretty much, from the 70s onwards. Well, New Zealand took till 1994. To finally get its act together and ban PCBs. But I've just told you they are forever chemicals. There are in the soil. There are in particular in those areas where there was industrial runoff. So we still see that as a legacy chemical, as a legacy poison, if you wanted to use that word. So we still see the flow and effects from the generations before us who were far more lax in the way that we used our environment as a trash pit. So it is intriguing that we see all these things impacting on us. But yes, the impact on our hormones is tremendous. There was a study not recently, about 10 years ago, I think, which was looking at the incidence of MOOPs. MOOPs are male boobs. And about 5% of men in the United States have got MOOPs. And unfortunately, I'm one of them. And I hate it. Absolutely hate it. I mean, for Christ's sake. I mean, some of my girlfriends in the past had larger boobs than me. Had smaller boobs than me, I should say. And here we are. This is a estrogen dominance that is displayed in my body. Since I've become a functional medicine doctor, I have used Dutch hormone testing to actually look at what are happening to do these various sex hormones within my body. And yes, boys, listen up. There is progesterone, there is estrogen going around, and that has a meaning and has an importance. And yes, there are sort of good estrogens, not so good estrogens. Too much of that, too little of that can suddenly play havoc. More interestingly, for those of you who really think, oh, okay, do I need to know anything? If there's any takeaway on the sex hormones, boys, look after your sleep, look after your stress. If you're stressed out to the hilt, you're not only giving the thyroid a hammering, you're not just affecting everything, but your cortisol, the body needs cortisol when it's stressed. And typically, you're not getting enough of the precursors for it. So it's looking around and say, okay, where can I get material to make more cortisol? Ooh, over there, sex hormones. He doesn't need that now, okay? So let's take some testosterone and reconvert it into cholesterol, what he really needs for the stress. So you're worried that you're having a low testosterone level? And you're thinking, oh, I need testosterone? No. You need to look at your lifestyle. You need to learn what's the root cause of your low testosterone. Yes, okay, you might be low, but that might be actually a blessing. And it probably has very little to do with your erectile dysfunction. Just a little hint, testosterone and ED have nothing much to do, but it's more libido that changes. So, but that's a whole different story. That's different story. So bottom line is your lifestyle will make a huge, huge impact on your sex span and your health span. And with that, we come back to the thyroid and to actually our toxins. We can do so much about exposure to that, because I think that's really where the money is. I would like to quickly jump onto the internet to say, hello, Dr. AJ from India has got this magic tea. From now on, you will drink this tea every night. This tea is coming for a very special price of $150. It's magically handcrafted, and it will completely get rid of all the toxins you need. And for free, easy payments, we will send you that. But fast forward 2 years.
I'm in.
Yeah, exactly. Fast forward 2 years. Dr. AJ is probably no longer to be found anywhere. Right now, if you were to Google Dr. AJ and do a bit of a search, you can't find that dude. And it's probably a heap of, probably they're not so meaningful things. And it's even if there was maybe one or two ingredients in there, that might actually be beneficial for your liver. Do you really think that this one tea, this one pill, this one quick fix will undo 40, 50, 60 years of damage in your body? Yeah, about that. So let's be quite clear. When we talk about these toxins, let's say mycotoxins and microplastics, I throw them into the same bucket here. Forgive me for that. Yes, you could say, oh, hang on, there are differences. Yes, but for the sake of us keeping it simple and keep it manageable, I think it serves us to add them all into the bucket of environmental challenges and toxins that we need to address to actually protect ourselves and create the best human version of ourselves. So please grant me that. When it comes to getting these gritters out of our body, the microplastics, the forever chemicals, and all those mycotoxins, that's a challenge and a half. For those of us in functional medicine, if we find a leaky gut and if we find some metabolic disturbance, that's easy money. We can easily guide you there. We can easily help you there. And often there can be within a short period of time, there can be quite significant changes, sometimes massive changes where the fog is lifting and by simply giving the body what it needs. I mean, how many people have I seen in the past who said, wow, as if someone switches the light on. Wow, what's happening? I love it. So this is easy in some human metabolic processes. It's not easy when it comes to these chemicals because they are well and truly hidden. And the body has no easy ways of getting them out. And often enough, the ways that we live, the way that we take life for granted is jeopardizing, is completely sabotaging our defensive and our detox mechanisms. Let's go through the principles, because you guys are here to learn what you can do, what you can't do. First of all, we already talked about the super detox teas and the quick fixes on the internet. Please, 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 if you want to not waste your money, if you want to spend money, find a charity that you can give that money to. Then at least you have done the right thing. Do not buy one quick fix on the internet. Honestly, it's just such a waste of money. And sometimes there was a beautiful study now, meanwhile, 15 years ago, which looked at Chinese herbs, healthy Chinese herbs, all these beautiful concoctions, and they analyzed it in the lab. Some of them had Voltaren or Nurofen anti-inflammatories in there. Some had steroids in there. Many of them had actually high levels of heavy metals in them. So don't think for a moment that nice, beautiful green picture on the front has anything to do with the content, what you're buying. So just big warning there. So coming back, if we say, well, there's no quick fix, what can we do? And with everything that we do in functional medicine, we've got a 5R approach. And the first R really stands for remove. Okay, so once they are in your system, not so easy to get them out. So therefore, I think the key thing for us to learn is how can we remove microplastics and mycotoxins from our environment. And that's already, it's easier said than done. Now, some things are very, very easy. You need to know how do they get into your system and what then can you do about it. And indeed, I'm putting a course together where we go in practice into that. But to keep it simple, I think there are low-hanging fruit right now, things that are very highly likely to impact your life as we speak here. And we can do something about that. If we were to think about your air quality to start with, I think air quality is one of those things that is so difficult because we can't see it. And we can't, if you think microplastics and from now and then you find a shard of something on your chicken breast, and you think, what the is that? Then, okay, that gives you an indication, hey, there's even something I can just barely notice. But most of the time, especially when it comes to air, we don't see that. So there are nowadays, there are a myriad of air purifiers out there. Some of them pure money-making machines, some of them incredibly confusing because you're not talking HEPA filters and you're talking weird amount of air changes per minute or per hour. And it's intriguing. So again, to keep it simple, I think there is a lot that we can do, especially if you are in an environment where predictably there is a lot of these things. Let's say the garment industry. And I've got a friend, she is a wedding dress designer. She's superb in what she does. But there she gets all these fabrics from China. After all, 80% of material is made in China. So she's getting it there. And often enough, she feels quite a bit sick when she gets new material and starting to use it up. And you can't just put those expensive materials through the washing machine. It doesn't work like that. So here she is, bathed in these kind of chemicals that she is breathing in. So for her to actually use an N95 mask might not be such a bad idea, or to use a highly effective air purifier that has an advanced technology in there that filters out even the volatiles, so those really little chemicals that are in the air, in addition to just the larger kind of filtering stuff, which has the whole range, including the less than 2.5 microns. Now that would be a huge start to reduce the burden of this lighting. So this would be looking at the air purifiers as a key thing. And depending on where you are and which environment you are, this might be very interesting. In the US, you've had huge wildfires, and there's very clear data on the wildfires and the impact onto the health of these people. Okay, so we have seen it. It's there. You just need to look at it. And so therefore, again, an air purifier might be a worthwhile investment. And they can be somewhere, a decent one, can be somewhere 300, 400 US dollars. And there are others which are then the more advanced ones that also take out the aerosols and those kind of things. And you're talking somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 US, which is a steep investment. But if this is a huge part of your load, of your burden of toxins, something to keep in mind. When it comes to water, water is something beautiful. We all are dehydrated. We should drink more. And yes, of course, you can say, oh, I buy Evian. Wonderful. And it's coming from the mountains of France. And it's then bottled on the belly buttons of a French goddess. And I pay about $10 per bottle. Yeah, about that. There was actually a beautiful study that looked into microplastics and nanoplastics in a whole range of bottled water. And the results were eye-watering. Okay, so there is, even in bottled water, there's actually a huge amount of things, because guess where this water is coming from? There's not this beautiful man with a filter.
It's about glass bottles, like waters.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Evian is a glass bottle with a metal screw cap. No, it's heaps of microplastics in there. And that's the intriguing thing. You think, what? So figure out, where do you get your water from? If you say, well, actually, I get it out of my tap, and I'm in New Zealand, green New Zealand, beautiful. Well, let's start off with, where's this water coming from? I mean, typically there is, if you look at different studies, different places, towns, some of the water that you drink out of the tap has gone 7 times through a human before it comes to you. Okay, so actually, we have got very modern filters in our public water reclaiming kind of plants, but nevertheless, you have got a huge amount of crap coming into that water. It's then they put all the sludge, etc., out of the water that is being collected. That sludge goes onto a field, by the way, and guess what that sludge contains? Microplastics, until the cows come home. See, the cows come home, okay, pun intended. So because it's now going onto the field as a cheap fertilizer, that's sludge. So the cows are having the microplastics, which are now accumulating within the meat of the cow, as well as in the cheese and the things that you have got. So when they say eat bio, well, there's a damn good reason, because recently we had a scandal here in New Zealand, and I've seen some scandals around the United States as well, where the amount of microplastics that were found in soil, where the farmers used very legitimately, as per law, the sludge from a water treatment plant, were actually extensive, were massive. So here you go. So you've got that water that you drink. Now, you can filter that. My friend, he's putting into this house, he has got a 0.1 micron filter at the main entrance, i.e. in the main water supply. Before anything comes into the house, there's 0.1 micron. That's not per any building code. So it's up to you to actually create those barriers that filter out much of the rubbish. So if you were to look at the water, a decent water filtration system, to start off with, just a simple 0.1 micron filter goes a long way. If you now know that there's actually more going on, you might then wish to think about reverse osmosis systems, and they can be 200, 300 New Zealand dollars, so about under 50, 200 US, I guess, in the various qualities that you can use. But this is only the drinking water, and reverse osmosis and these kind of things. There's a huge water wastage. Some systems, as much as for every liter of water that you gain to drink, you lose about 4 liters of water down the drain. So you need to look at the realities of water shortages around the world, etc. You could say, well, actually, I'm living on the land. I'm healthy. Well, yeah. If you look at Canterbury Plains and you look at the many beautiful, I'm in dairy country here, the huge nitrate pollution that affects us. And again, when we talk about the nitrates and similar components, they are blocking iodine quite effectively. So if you have got lots and lots of those kind of red meat, rather fatty fish, those kind of things, well, there are actually a lot of components in there, not just microplastics, but also other chemicals that are further impairing the use of iodine within the body. So where are we? Air filters, water filters and water filtration systems. Food. When we look at food, there are so many things you can do. First of all, the food that you buy, the Environmental Working Group is every year putting out the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. These are basically groups of vegetables and groups of food that are heavily polluted in general terms. And if you actually make yourself knowledgeable on that, then you can either avoid those or prepare them in such a way that those toxins either washed off, etc. Many of us don't realize that with the modern convenience of buying in the supermarket, that comes with risks. And with that, I don't mean that someone drives their cart into you. No, I mean the fact that when you actually buy chicken or fish that is already done, so you buy it in a plastic container with some cellophane over it and think, oh, that's a nice chicken breast, let's make that tonight. Per gram of chicken meat, there is 1 particle of microplastics in there already as you buy. And that then goes up when you actually prepare it at home. So you just take it out, you don't wash it, and now you put it onto your plastic chopping board where you go cut it all small. So now you're actually adding tiny amounts, shards of microplastic from the cutting board onto that. You then put it into a plastic container and say, well, okay, let's heat it up or let's do something with it. Well, now that's the real cool stuff. All those plasticizers, all those things in the plastic, when you heat them up, now they come out to play. It's amazing. So one of the worst things you can do is actually to put leftovers into some plastic and then later reheat it in the plastic in the microwave. That's one of those things which I strongly recommend you not to do. When you think about how else they go into your system, well, how many of us are going to the filling station, filling up the car, filling up our coffee and fix, and get on with life? Well, if you have these plastic cups, they in the past have had a lot of BPA in there. Nowadays, so one other chemical that messes around with your system. These cups, their design has changed a little bit, but ultimately there's still a lot of interesting things in there. Even if some of them are BPA free now. Oh, great. BPA, I keep forgetting what BPA is. Bisphenol. Bisphenol. That's bisphenol A. There's bisphenol S, bisphenol F. No. It's the whack-a-mole. So they take BPA out and they put another plastizer in to achieve the same goal, So bottom line is there are many ways where you can actually learn to say, well, okay, I take my own cup. And ideally it's a cup that is actually metal, not plastic. And I ask, if I really decide to still pay $5 for a cup of coffee somewhere, then you let them fill that up. Or may I just suggest you make your own coffee at home and put it in your steel or glass thermos and take it with you? Just afford. I mean, save some money for crying out loud and save the universe. There are certain things that are very, very easy. Don't heat things up. Don't put hot stuff into plastic, in this case, the coffee. Same with your tea. It is the amount of microplastics that are coming from tea bags can be astounding. So here you are. We are already going. I'm just going through one bit after the other. And there are so many things we can do. Wash your meat when you take it home. Wash your fish when you take it home. Then let it dry. Cut it on a wooden board. And with that, you have taken a significant amount of microplastics out of your food. Now, let's talk ultra-processed food. And do you think it's all being processed by beautiful stainless steel? No, there's plastic left, right, and center. So ultra-processed food not only has a lot of interesting ingredients that are not good for you, they also have a significant amount of microplastics there. And we know that certainly from takeaway food. What containers do they put it in? Some of them nowadays in cardboard, but the cardboard is still lined with plastic. Otherwise, it would within 5 minutes would be soaking through. Or in plastic containers. Well, guess what that boiling hot food in that plastic container does until you take it home and eat it? Yes, exactly. You got the answer. So there are so many things where you can prevent, and prevention is the biggest thing you can do, guys. When it comes to the house, a bit more difficult because so often you can't find the mold. That's where specialist services need to come in. There are a number of tests you can do within the household, ERMI, and I won't go into details now because that the detection of mold is a highly specialized thing that can so easily be done wrong. And you get this kind of, let's do it yourself test, and you have no idea what to use, and it comes back negative. And you think, yeah, mold is not an issue, when in reality, that's what is killing you slowly. So therefore, that is so much more than just a quick fix, Bunnings or whatever DIY warehouse test you're thinking. There are, however, you and me as functional medicine practitioners, we have got access to tests. And if we have got a suspicion that mold may play a role, then there are certainly urine tests which can be very revealing. And there is certain gut testing and certain thyroid testing. These three I would put high up there when it comes to the mold detection to actually use at this combination of that. The reason I also think about the thyroid testing, because the mycotoxins and microplastics are the perfect chameleons. So they can create this picture of hypothyroidism, of clinical picture of hypothyroidism, and you think, it's a thyroid, or it's menopause. I mean, I guess this would be a study we too should do. We should take women from a menopause clinic and run them through testing for hypothyroidism and for mycotoxins. And let's pick a few chemicals for our environmental toxin testing. Now, that would be a study and a half to actually see what's the overlap there. My educated guess, depending upon where we do this study, there would be a huge overlap. Don't you agree?
I do. Yeah. If you are looking to do everything you can to save your thyroid, in addition to watching my videos on YouTube, you also might want to subscribe to my free online newsletter, which is called Healthy Gut, Healthy Thyroid. Not only will you get the latest news on how to heal your gut and restore your thyroid health, but during each edition, I'll demonstrate a different blood or functional medicine test marker that relates to healing your gut and or your thyroid. There will also be an Ask Dr. Eric section where not only can you see questions that other people have asked related to gut and thyroid health, but you can also submit a question for me to answer in a future edition. To subscribe to the Healthy Gut, Healthy Thyroid newsletter, please visit savemythyroid.com/newsletter.
Okay, we have talked about prevention, and I know I'm using so much of your beautiful time. So let's talk about how do we get it rid of the body? Let's get it out. Do it now.
I wanted to get sauna, colonics. What? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Colonics in the sauna.
There you go.
That's right. And then we close the door and see what happens. No, hey, that's the problem, isn't it? Beautiful studies out there that immediately were taken up by the sauna industry and by the red light bandits out there. I'm half joking, half being serious. Where there was one study that found, hey, look, we can get rid of lead, cadmium, all the heavy metals. They come out in the skin in the sauna. How cool is that? So from now on, 5 times sauna a week, and buy our $10,000 sauna for a special 4 prices off. Yeah, unfortunately. So whilst it is true that certain things can be measured in the sweat and where certain things come out, yes, heavy metals do come out, but in such a tiny, tiny, tiny amount that it's absolutely, we are talking 0.01% of the burden that is within your body. So that's a heap of baloney. And unfortunately, when it comes to other toxins, you can't just say sauna is a detox agent. For some things, it is. But these toxins, in order to really come easily out of the skin, they actually need to be more water soluble, or they need to be of a more volatile, so tiny, tiny chemicals that are floating in the air. So if you are a painter and you didn't have your gear on and you breathed the whole day, volatile chemicals, you're walking around like a waddling chemical plant. I think for you to actually do some sauna, that would be not a bad idea. That should be part and parcel of your healing, together with buying yourself new protective equipment. So for some toxins, absolutely. And when I talk sauna, when you and I talk sauna, we should say now the application of heat, either in traditional saunas or infrared saunas, doesn't matter. We are talking the use of heat to actually do all the beautiful benefits And we know it from the large body of evidence from the Scandinavian countries and Russia and other places where sauna is part of the world, Germany for that matter. We know that's incredibly good for you for a number of reasons. There are heat shock proteins that suddenly come out, and we're messing around with some of the brain hormones. It's beautiful, good stuff. So is sauna healthy? Yes, no two ways around it. Is sauna a great detox? Yeah, it depends. So I think it can be incredibly powerful, but it is certainly not a quick. There is some evidence that a sauna session will actually mobilize some of the chemicals from within the fat cells and therefore come now available towards the liver to detoxify. But if your liver is still under complete stress and you have not supported it with the right scheme of things, and if your nutrition is still shit because you have barely any fiber in your food, so now those toxins are coming out, the liver can barely manage to detox some of it. Okay, so now we've got detox something, so we're going to put it into the gut. Now there's no fiber there to bind it. The stuff is looking around, thinking, my God, he's constipated, I'm hanging around here, stuff it. I go straight back into the system, and there we are back in the fat. So sauna alone, not a clever thing for detox. But if we were to say, actually, we're going to put it together with a sensible thing. So where we support the liver, where we increase the fiber intake, where we actually maybe even use binders, something where we can, after detoxing in the liver and supporting the excretion of bile and the stuff from the liver into the gut, now we are binding things in there. In some cases, depending upon the toxin, that can be exactly the right way forward. So sauna alone? No. Sauna together with exercise, together with other photobiomodulation, or other, let's go wider, with other means of supporting the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell. If we actually address that in the right way, wow, suddenly things are happening. Coming back to the thyroid and coming back to basics. If we were to think about detoxing, well, we actually need to replenish so many of the things that we don't have in our food. New Zealand, naturally poor selenium, zinc in our soil here. So unfortunately, we are suffering from that. We're on the back foot of that. So therefore, to actually add all the good stuff in and making sure that that your body on a cellular basis has everything that it needs, well, that's the basis. And so many of us are completely denuded, either from 40 years of fast food and bad habits, or from 2 pregnancies back to back. They're stripped bare. There is nothing left in the cells. You're running on fumes. And that's where that all comes in. So it is healing that doesn't come in the form of a magic pill or in a magic detox, but it comes with regards to first having a suspicion and having an investigation into root causes. And mycotoxins or microplastics may very well play a role. And in the future, we might recognize much stronger or much more how strong that link can be. That's my educated guess. We then need to remove the toxins, prevent you from getting more crap into you. For that, there needs to be a huge lifestyle shift. Although, whilst I say huge, it's big. There's so many things you could address. But if you do it systematically over a short period of time, you have done huge amounts to reduce the burden. And then we think about, okay, what really is going on? What's your genetics? For some people, there are genetic predispositions that maybe the way your detox systems work, you're a bit on the back foot. So they need maybe specific attention to that. So I find that genetics plays a small role. I would say less than 5% in many cases. Even if there are some models there where you say, oh, well, if you look at Alzheimer's, ApoE4, my God, you've got 2 alleles of ApoE4, well, you get Alzheimer's, that's it. Yeah, no, that has changed our understanding in the last 10 years again. It just means you're a sitting duck for it. But if you now do the lifestyle changes and to really commit to a certain lifestyle, you can reverse Alzheimer's. You, at least in the early stages, that's for sure. And you can prevent Alzheimer's, the clinical Alzheimer's, despite the fact that you're genetically inferior sitting duck. So we know that. So genes are not the answer, that's for sure. But sometimes they can give us valuable information. My vitamin D receptors are running at 30%. I know that from genetic testing. And so I know that I need more vitamin D than any recommendations out there. And indeed, I have for a long time used more, and I've done the testing. I'm actually high normal in my testing now, so I'm certainly not toxic. These are all examples where our care needs to be streamlined. It's not just that kind of, oh, let's throw everything at this guy. No, we need to figure out, is there a problem? Define it, see the root causes, deal with them, prevent further intoxication, then start a systematic approach. And that systematic approach needs to be holistic. Again, there is not one magic pill. No, there might be a systematic way of getting the poisons to the liver or wherever they're getting gobbled up, support that organ, then get it to the right excretion, either the kidneys or the poo, and support that. And that over time can actually do that. Reduce the burden, increase the way that your body can deal with it, make you more resistant to the impact of the toxins. There are ways of doing that. So that's really what our magic is all about, what you and I do. We are going out there and actually are intensely curious. And we don't take no for an answer necessarily. So if you see a normal TSH and a normal thyroid hormone, then you get curious. And you say, well, hang on, there's a bit more to that. And it's the same with when we look at the wider problems that our audience faces in this case, or the people in the world are facing. The amount of burnout, the amount of 50% of people in most studies are burned out with huge impact on their health. And we've got the menopause and the issues surrounding that, the perimenopause, should I say. And there's so many problem kind of clusters, symptom clusters that we sort of put in there. And when we were to peel them back and have unlimited funding for testing, would we not be surprised about the root causes that we discover? Where you think, no, that's just whatever, menopause in this case. And where indeed we say, well, actually, girl, there is a lot of other stuff going on. And yes, we can do X, Y, and Z and hormone replacement, but what about all the root causes there? I think that will be something that we will see in the future far stronger, because our population is getting sicker and sicker.
How about glutathione? Like you mentioned binders, and we chat about sauna. What do you think about like either N-acetylcysteine or liposomal glutathione?
Yes, exactly. All of them are beautiful in principle terms. So for that, we need to go into the details of the liver detoxification. There's phase 1 and phase 2. So it's a sort of a stepwise approach how the liver deals with things. And there are certain compounds that come either naturally in the food, which are really good. I mean, it's not for nothing that we say, eat your greens, eat the rainbow, eat cruciferous foods like the Brussels sprouts and the broccoli. It's not for nothing that we say that, because there are very powerful components in there or compounds in there that are helping the liver to function in the best possible way. To answer your question more specifically, yes and no, because it depends upon which kind of toxins are involved. And that's the reason that, for example, with mold, we do a toxin testing, because how you deal with one toxin might be different. So for some toxins, binders are good and for others not good. Glutathione and those kind of things are good in general terms. I'd say 80-90%, but there are some exceptions to the rule. So it depends a bit more on the toxin and on the testing that we have done. In general terms, if you just wanted to have a shotgun approach, I think there are certain detox pathways that in general terms deserve the help that you can give them. And acetylcysteine and glutathione are definitely something that I would be quite happy to take, but that is for me, personal health, longevity, those kind of things. That is not me having evidence that a particular toxin is playing havoc in my systems. So this is my personal choice in this case. Or for those people who just want to actually be preventative and don't have a huge cluster of symptoms and want to do something good, I think there is some value in that. I'm not aware of a study that shows that if we were to take healthy people and supplement N-acetylcysteine now for a year, that there would be a change in health outcomes. Are you aware of anything by accident? I don't think I've seen anything.
No, I haven't seen what, just healthy people you said, not trying.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And
It might be out there, but no, I haven't. If it is, I've
yeah,
not come across
yeah.
that either. So,
Well, and that's the problem, because we've got this huge spread of people. People are becoming more interested in those kind of things. Yet when we look into them, if we were to strip out, really open the hood and have a good look into the engine, then there are some people who are actually quite healthy. Then there are other people who are actually quite sick but don't know it yet. And then there is the last component who are really sick and they know it. So I think if we can be broad in this population, and that's where we are swinging both in Western medicine and also where we are learning in functional medicine, different things. What do I mean? 10 years ago, everyone should be on aspirin. Actually, that should be in the drinking water. Okay, there was this idea of combining 6 therapeutic agents into one tablet, and that would be the magic fix that cures all ill of cardiovascular health. That was 10, 20 years ago. Meanwhile, we understand that those people who are healthy, who have got no risk factors, and you give them aspirin, there's actually an increased problem scenario building up. So that recommendation has gone away. What does that mean in functional medicine? Similar things. First of all, nutrition, for crying out loud. The food pyramid from 1992, something that all the institutions out there were saying, yes, that's how nutrition needs to be. Well, that contributed hugely to the amount of obesity that we are facing nowadays. So thanks, whoever invented it. And I hope you had a good use of all the gazillions that you were paid by the lobbyists of the various sugar industries and carbohydrate industries. So we learn that certain things are changing. We get newer insights. I think that is so important, why you want to work with a functional medicine practitioner or a nutritionist, etc., who has got a finger on a pulse, because things are changing. For example, I blame you. I have got a, what is the word? I've got a bone to pick with you. Here for years, I have used my Brussels sprouts with a belief that I'm doing the right thing. So I put my Brussels sprouts straight out of the freezer into the steamer, gave them an hour because that's how I like them, and that's it. In preparation of my show here today with you, I realized, because they're thiocyanates, these are actually things that are in Brussels sprouts that are not so good. They actually can block iodine. So I realized, shit, okay, I'm eating actually Brussels sprouts virtually every day, and I cook the hell out of it. So hang on, what really happens when I do different cooking methods? So I began researching. And here I am. I thought I knew what I was talking about. Turns out that there are 2 components in Brussels sprouts. One is the thiocyanates that you really want to hammer. And the longer you can nuke them or steam them, the better it is. The more they are taken out, therefore my iodine is preserved. At the same token, sulforaphans. There are other components in the Brussels sprouts that are quite heat sensitive. So if I steam them more than 5 minutes, well, I'm going to kill the good stuff. So all the good stuff that I'm telling you should eat your Brussels sprouts for, well, sorry, they're gone. So now it's that 5 minutes, pay attention to what you're doing, no longer fire and forget. Here I am. I'm learning. And I guess that's where we all need to come together. We all need to exchange information. We need to have, based upon new studies, new information that is coming out, we need to have repeated, informed, open discussions. And then we can make the best informed choice. But it is really, we are talking about a highly individualized medicine that we need to do nowadays. It's not good that you just say, oh, God, everyone should have X. Or you just through the telephone conversation, oh yeah, I think you should have X. No, please fill out my 2,500 questionnaires and let's actually have a physical examination if appropriate. Then let's do some testing, and then let's figure out what are the root causes that are contributing to all that. And there might be so much there, so much that we have not even touched upon here, and that's okay. But you need to have some clarity, and you need to have some educated, not an educated guess, that's completely wrong, a plan that is highly likely to address the many issues that we have found. Some of them will be easy, some of them not so easy. And it will very likely include no quick fix, but depending upon how complicated your story is, for example, mycotoxins or microplastics, it's likely a journey of half a year, maybe even a year. And there will not be any quick fixes. We all know that everyone working in the mycotoxin world unfortunately realizes that. So reality check there. But will you be a better version in 6 months' time? Hell yes. Will you have cleaned up so many other aspects of your life that probably have contributed to your poor health? And with hindsight, you will recognize your poor decision-making in business, the way you interact as a father, mother, child, person in your sphere of influence. You're going to be a very, very different person at the end of it, a much stronger person, the version 2.0, 5.0. And that's exciting. You don't even know where these changes will lead you to. But it is an amazing journey. It was in me. No doubt it was in you, Eric, because we both come up from a place of darkness. So we now appreciate the light, and we have made it our mission to go onto shows, to shout it from the rooftops. Hey guys, there is help, there is hope. But yeah, it doesn't come as a quick fix.
Yeah, definitely agree. Well, I mean, this was a amazing conversation. If someone is interested in working with you, or if they just want to find out more information, can you let them know how to find out about you? There's neffinspiration.com, obviously the podcast that I was
Correct.
Also on a guest. So tell them, and of course we'll put links in the show notes, but if you could just verbally tell everybody where they could find you.
Absolutely. I think the best points of getting to know me are my two websites. One is neffinspiration.com. And the other one is neffunctionalmedicine.com. And so Neff, 2F at the end, the functional has 1 F at the front. So yes, there are 3 Fs in there. Okay. Neff Functional Medicine, all in one. That leads you to my clinic website. And there you get a better idea of what I'm doing. And it is a beautiful world out there. It's a scary world. Okay. Once you actually open the hood, be prepared that there are some surprises waiting for you. But at the same token, if you don't have many clinical symptoms yet, or haven't recognized them that they were really a problem, that this is the perfect time, because we can undo damage in dramatic fashions. If you are sick like a dog, at least in your perception, and probably in real life, and you have been to 7 different doctors who gave you 8 different opinions and none of them made a difference, then I congratulate you. You're like Thomas Alva Edison. You have found 8 different ways how not to create a light bulb. Now I never know if it is 1,000 or 2,000 ways how not to create a light bulb, but he succeeded. Okay, so don't give up, because it is very highly likely that you have not yet found the right person to assist you. And I think working with Eric and working with myself, there's a fair chance that you can catalyze, you can speed up this journey where you can learn more about yourself in ways that you don't even know. And I think that is the amazing thing. So, and if you feel, well, both Eric and me are not the right people, look around for a functional medicine doctor, look around for someone who is holistically trained. And with that, someone who is straddling both the Western style medicine plus, for the lack of a better word, alternative therapies. If someone says, no, we will do for a year only now frequency healing, you run a mile. If someone says, oh, no, all that stress bullshit. No, look at me. I eat my sausages in the morning, and look at me. That's how I look. Yeah, okay, you run a mile. You need to have both.
Agree. So that's well said. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stefan. This was, again, great conversation. You provided a lot of great information to help people with, I mean, again, we're not going to escape microplastics. We're not going to completely escape the mycotoxins, the PCBs, like you said, the forever chemicals. But as you mentioned, just trying to do what we can to minimize our exposure to them, as well as some things that we can do to help to detox. So yeah, this was a great conversation and really appreciate it.
It was my honor, my privilege to be on your platform. Thank you, Eric, for being such an outspoken advocate for patients out there. You're an amazing dude. So it was so great that we two connected, and let's see how we can make this world a better place. One interview, one book, one project at a time.
Definitely agree. Thanks again. Thank you so much.